This is ABC 17's Lucas Geisler alongside ABC 17's Hannah Falcon as we bring you live coverage of the State of the State address, the final one of the Governor Mike Parson administration. Since 2018, he has been the governor here delivering these remarks, has been through a lot as well, and so we expect to hear his final priorities here in his last year at the State of the State. Hannah.
Yeah, the governor, he really came in under a turbulent circumstance because he wasn't just his first time serving. He wasn't just elected like normal. And like we heard earlier today, he only had 60 hours to prepare for being governor after the Greitens impeachment. And Lucas, you probably know more about that than I do, of course. You probably have some more firsthand experience with that.
Absolutely. It was an unconventional start to the Parson administration in 2018 when Governor Eric Greitens resigned. As you mentioned, Hannah, as his chief of staff said earlier, 60 hours they had to get that office set up back in the summer of 2018, and now have obviously governed through a lot of it. You talk the social unrest of 2020, 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic, and lots of
natural disasters and drought. And we know that the governor cares a lot about agriculture, especially with his background and things. And we're still experiencing a lot of that drought, and the farmers are still experiencing that. That was certainly something we saw him putting a lot of executive orders into, a lot of money into, and we might see some more money for agriculture here. Just 2 weeks ago, I want to say, was the executive order on foreign-owned agricultural land. So that natural disaster, drought, agriculture, those are things that he's definitely been focused on during his time here.
And we'll expect to hear a lot of it probably in this speech. That's what these speeches have usually been used for, these States of the State addresses, to talk about what he wants to see in the budget. He gets to propose the initial budget that the lawmakers then have the ultimate say in what gets passed throughout these next several months. But we're going to probably hear a lot about the things that we've been hearing a lot about in previous years, roads being a big one. I-70 was sort of the major ticket at last year's speech, Hannah. So we'll see what he rolls out as far as transportation, what the plan is in his final year, as well as mental health. We know that's been a big thing he's put a lot of money and focus on, is trying to, really deal with a lot of backlog of mental health cases, whether they're in court, at home. So maybe see some money put towards that as well. I want to defer to you, Hannah. You're here a lot. You hear from a lot of these people. You're very knowledgeable about this as well. What's something that you're kind of expecting to hear from the governor to lay out, and something that have lawmakers' interest as well?
Yeah, something that I have been anticipating, and I've been saying this, is actually broadband expansion. I've noticed that in the past couple of years, really, the state's been applying for a lot of those federal grants and giving out a lot of grants on broadband expansion, especially focused on the rural areas. And I know that we've done reports here too on the lack of internet access, especially in those rural areas of Missouri, but even some unreliable internet access when you get into more populated areas. And it's of course something that you can't live without anymore. It's basically a utility. You need it like you need electricity and water. You need that internet to stay connected. So I personally have been expecting to hear something given to broadband expansion into that office. We have to have a fairly new office of broadband for the whole state. I've spoken with that director in the past. That's something he's really getting it off the ground, getting it started. So I'm expecting to hear something on that, especially as he closes out. I think that's something he wants to tie a bow on for his last year.
Sure, and you probably expect to hear kind of along those themes, like what is the legacy of Mike Parson as the governor of the state of Missouri? What have these 6 years kind of accomplished for him? As I kind of survey the scene behind us, Hannah, taking a look at everything you see, I see Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft kind of making the rounds right now, talking to different lawmakers here. As we usually see during these, they're probably off camera at this point, but sort of the state office holders that all kind of hang out near the lectern here. I see Attorney General Andrew Bailey, Treasurer Vivek Malik, as well. Two, by the way, Parson appointees.
Yes.
He's had a huge influence as far as the executive branch right now, having appointed many many people into those positions in his time.
And when you talk about legacy, that is something that he will leave behind, because those people will continue to serve and be in office even after he's gone. Some, might cycle out and there will be replacements coming, of course, but that is a major legacy, and a major part of being governor is creating that cabinet and creating that support branch. So I think he has left a lot of people, and he'll leave the impact in that way of having a lot of like-minded people in office. But it's not even just the executive branch when we talk about appointees, it's also the judicial branch. He's made a lot of changes there as well, and we now have the first female majority judicial state Supreme Court.
Supreme Court, absolutely. That for certain. A big thing that he will put on his accomplishment is appointing that, and as well as all of the lower level judges. I think he said more than 100. Was it 100 judicial appointees, like 100 appointees as to judges at the circuit level, the appellate level as well? So absolutely, his power, the governor's power of appointment there, he used it, whether it was people getting elected to different offices while they were there, or otherwise. That has to be one of sort of the lasting parts of the Parson legacy here. So we'll definitely see what this speech has to go with it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course, though, don't know if this will be a part of the speech or not. It usually might try to tend away to talking about the other branches of government. Of course, whatever budget he has is going to have to go through the legislature.
Yes.
Hannah, you were just here yesterday to highlight that it has not been exactly the rosiest relationship that the members of the legislature have had with each other. We'll see if he even remarks about any of that, but as far as getting things done, that's something he's going to have to deal with. Can you catch us up on where are we at on the relationship, especially in the Senate?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything has to go through the legislative process. All of his proposals and things are not final. This isn't the budget until it gets approved. And even before session starting, we saw him just the day before it started, and he was kind of making jokes about it. But as we all know, it is an election year. His seat is up for election, and several people in this building are running for that seat. And we have seen a lot of drama. It's just been a couple of weeks, and just yesterday we saw a couple of members lose their committee privileges and apparently their parking privileges too, over this drama. And that's really the best way to describe it, is they're fighting, and it's not even the typical fighting that you expect to see in any government. It's not party versus party. We're seeing it within the party. Of course, there's now more caucuses and subgroups within the parties, but yeah, the Senate is being particularly fickle. That's something that we were talking about, and we were kind of speculating. Yesterday, the day before the state of the state, the pro tem did make the decision to sort of punish some members who.
You're talking about Senate pro tem.
Yes,
Caleb Rowden.
Senate Pro Tem Caleb Rowden made the decision to sort of punish some Senate members for holding up the floor and for filibustering the past couple of weeks. And I also kind of find the timing of it interesting, because after the state of the state, when we have those budget priorities, is when things really need to pick up and when it's time to really put the nose to the grindstone and start working. So I wonder if that was part of the decision to do that, was like, hey, we need to start working now.
Sure. Now, a huge issue there in the Senate is this initiative petition reform. The initiative petition, for maybe those unfamiliar with the term, that's those things that appear on the ballot, those questions that you vote on. For some recent examples, do you want legal marijuana? Do you want medical marijuana? Do you want campaign contribution limits? That was a question many years ago. These are the kinds of things that eventually, people gather signatures on a petition, turn it into the Secretary of State, goes through that, and ends up on the ballot. Well, Republicans, they've wanted to essentially increase that threshold. Right now, you need 50, just north of 50% for something to pass. So Republicans are looking to increase that, because this has largely been a process used by what some would describe sort of Democratic issues, or at least issues that the Democratic Party favors. Raising the minimum wage, that was another thing through the initiative petition. So Republicans want to raise that because of perhaps a looming petition on abortion access, getting that in the state constitution. And how that process goes in the Senate seems to be what holds it up. I'm very interested, bringing this back to the state of the state now, I'm very interested to see if Governor Parson has an idea on initiative petition reform. Does he have a preferred avenue or method to get that through the legislature? How does he want to see that happen? Maybe that's the nudge that the lawmakers need, unlike that, as maybe the Republican Party sets us forward on how we're going to handle it here. We'll see. I don't know if he'll weigh in on something sort of that specific on this, but I'm definitely curious to see if he kind of nudges this in a certain direction to try to get through this issues, this rancor right now in the state Senate, Hannah. So anyway, any other issues that are sort of on your mind as far as that you'd be interested to hear him weigh in on? Things that you've just been hearing around the building in the time that you've been here this year.
Yeah, I've heard that education is really a priority for everyone here. Of course, everyone has different ideas on what that means. The governor actually recently declared this week School Choice Week, and school choice is something that we're seeing a lot of topics on, and that's when you get to decide where your children go to school, and you can decide where the public funds used to typically send to public schools would go, whether that is your public school or maybe a private school or homeschool programs. So I think education, school choice and education is definitely a Republican priority right now, while I'm hearing from the Democratic Party that they want to protect those public schools and make sure that they have the funds needed to continue paying teachers. We recently saw teacher pay, although we know that teacher pay increase to $38,000 still leaves Missouri at the bottom of the country as far as teacher pay.
Yeah, sure.
So,
and another year of the grant program, I think we believe is probably in store with the budget. Having school districts opt in to that right now. I'm curious, probably a lot of education groups just want to see the statutory minimum go up, like what the state requires that the minimum that teachers get paid here. So yeah, that's a great point with education too, is like essentially public funds being used to help pay for maybe a tuition to a charter school. You hear that term a lot, charter schools. Those are mainly in the St. Louis and Kansas City area. I know some, Republicans in Boone County especially have said they want to bring that to Boone County. They want to be the ones to help open and facilitate the first charter school in that area. So obviously, as you said, that's a great insight, Hannah. Like a huge interest here to set something like that up. So we'll see how far it gets this year. We'll see what happens with it. Another thing, interested to see here what the governor has in mind, if he's maybe got something that he wants to nudge forward on.
Yeah, that is interesting, especially talking about the pay grant, because I have been talking to especially rural school districts when it comes to that, and those are the ones that use that grant the most because they struggle the most coming up with that money. Of course, being in a smaller area, there's just generally less funds, but when I talk to them, what they say is this grant is great, but they want something permanent, and that's not something we've really heard this administration express interest in doing, is any kind of permanent base fund, adding that to the kind of the base fund of the budget, because right now we're just having these grants that they keep adding in. But I wonder if that's anything that maybe as we're going through this election cycle is maybe a question that we should ask these candidates for governor. How would they approach the teacher pay issue? Because that has been something coming from the executive branch that might see a change when the new governor comes in.
For sure. Interesting point there. Again, as far as that, speaking of those hopefuls for governor, I mentioned Jay Ashcroft. He's right behind us here. Up at the lectern right now talking to the speaker is Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, another gubernatorial hopeful out there from Jefferson City. A lot of folks in Jefferson City probably recognize that name, Mike Kehoe. So there he is up there. Again, just surveying the room for various other people. The auditor, Scott Fitzpatrick, keeping I would say, 3-row space with Jay Ashcroft right now. Obviously, those two have their just recent disagreements on an audit that Fitzpatrick's office did with that. Whatever the case, this brings out all sorts of people throughout the Capitol to come see the State of the State address.
General Andrew Bailey, who was, of course, he was appointed when Eric Schmidt went to the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and now he's running to keep that seat.
Yes. I will say, I notice here too, total aside, I see Warren County Prosecutor Kelly King is here right now, who's actually one of Andrew Bailey's first bosses. in the state. That's one of his first jobs as an assistant prosecutor in Warren County. So I see Prosecutor Kelly King here handled a number of cases that we've covered, like around mid-Missouri. So just a stray observation there for it. I do also want to talk about, again, one of the big legacy things is roads, right? Getting 3 lanes on I-70, you could probably call it a career just on that. If you were in some way, shape, or form the one that kind of shepherded that to the finish line in some way, I think a lot of people would say, like, all right, great job, thanks for that. So that's another thing. We got actually asked for an update on that from MoDOT. We had a chance to talk to a lot of the directors, and so one of the MoDOT directors, the MoDOT director, Patrick McKenna, said they're still on task for that. Expansion and starting again. Remember, from Columbia to Kingdom City.
Mr. Clerk, would you please close the board? By your vote of 152 yea, 0 nay, with 3 present, you have suspended House Rule 123. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be the State of the State Address.
Mr. Sergeant at Arms, please open the doors and allow the members of the Senate to enter the chamber.
All right. Right now, speaking of the Senate, they're all about to come in. I think at this time, probably a good idea, Hannah, we'll bow out. We'll let the State of the State Address now take over, what you all probably tuned in for right now. So thank you for listening to our preamble here to the speech alongside Hannah Falcon and all of her expertise here. I'm Lucas Geisler. Enjoy the State of the State Address.
The joint session of the 102nd General Assembly, second regular session will come to order. Mr. Sergeant of Arms.
Mr. President, the members of the Missouri State Highway Patrol Troop F will now present our colors.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, open the doors and allow the Missouri State Highway Patrol Troop F Color Guard to present the colors. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America Thank you, and please help me welcome and appreciate the Troop F Color Guard folks for being here today and their service. The clerk of the House will open the board. All members of the House will signify their presence by voting aye. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. The Secretary of the Senate will call the roll for members of the Senate.
Senators Arthur, Bean, Beck, Bernsketter, Black, Bratton, Brown 16, Brown 26, Carter, Serpoy, Coleman, Crawford, Eigel, Esslinger, Fitzwater, Gannon, Hoskins, Huff, Koenig, Luetkemeyer, May, McCreary, Moon, Mosley, O'Laughlin, Razor, Rizzo, Roberts, Rowden, Rohr, Thompson Raider, Trent, Washington, Williams.
Present.
With 140 House members voting yea, 13 present, and 33 members of the Senate voting, a quorum has been established. The joint session is in order. Will the Joint Committee for the Governor please assemble in the rear of the chamber? Representatives Tolson Reich, Reedy, Stevens, Kelly, Berger, Stacy, Brown, Barnes, Bangert, and Meredith. Senators Crawford, Esslinger, Bean, Bernsketter, Huff, Lincoln, Luetkemeyer, Black, Rizzo, Arthur, and May.
Lincoln.
While the Escort Committee assembles, I'm also happy to introduce our special guest for today. Please help me welcome Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, Attorney General Andrew Bailey, State Treasurer Vivek Malik, State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick, House Chaplain Monsignor Robert Kowicki, Chief Justice Mary Russell, Judge Kelly Broniak, Judge Zell Fisher, Judge Ginger Gooch, Judge Brent Powell, Judge Robin Ransom, Judge Paul Wilson, and the Clerk of the Supreme Court, Betsy Aubuchon. Also with us today are members of the Governor's Cabinet, Ken Zellers, Commissioner of Missouri Office of Administration, Chris Chin, Missouri Department of Ag, Sarah Parker Pauley, Missouri Department of Conservation, Trevor Foley, Acting Director of Missouri Department of Corrections, Dr. Margie Van Deven, Commissioner of Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Paula Nicholson, Director of Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, Dr. Bennett Boggs, Commissioner of Missouri Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development, Clara Lindley Myers, Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance, Anna Hugh, Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, Valerie Hume, Director of Missouri Department of Mental Health, Major General Levon Compton, Missouri National Guard. Drew Button, Missouri Department of Natural Resources. Sandy Carson, Missouri Department of Public Safety. Wayne Wallingford, Missouri Department of Revenue. Robert Nodell, Director of Missouri Department of Social Services. Patrick McKenna, Director of Missouri Department of Transportation. Todd Richardson, Director of Missouri Mo Health Net. I'm also pleased to announce to my left, Second Lady Claudia Kehoe. And last but not least, please help me welcome First Lady Teresa Parson. Mr. Sergeant of Arms.
Mr. President, the Governor's Escort Committee now approaches the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, open the doors to allow the Governor's Escort Committee to enter the chamber. Mr. Sergeant of Arms.
Mr. President, the Governor of the State of Missouri approaches the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, open the doors to allow the Governor to enter the chamber.
Governor, welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the 57th Governor of the State of Missouri, Michael L. Parson, to the dais.
I thought maybe the speaker was going to do this. Oh, okay, all right. Well, first of all, thank you, Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Speaker, statewide officials, members of the General Assembly, esteemed guests, and it is my honor to welcome, for the first time in our state's history, judges of the first ever female majority Supreme Court of Missouri. There's another person I want to recognize today that I normally don't do it, but I'm going to do it very quickly. It is a gentleman that has been doing this job for 20 years, making sure these teleprompters work correctly. Todd Mayfield is doing his 20th session here in the state of Missouri. Todd, thank you. Well, to say the least, it's an honor to be joined by the First Lady as I welcome to the dais for the final time as the 57th Governor of the great state of Missouri. During our time as Governor, we've accomplished more than any of us probably thought was ever possible. But I wouldn't be standing here today without my support system, my family. And that's where I want to start today. First and foremost, the First Lady. Teresa has been by my side every step of the way, and after 38 years of marriage, I wouldn't be the husband, the father, the gramps, or governor I am today without her. Thank you for serving in a role you never asked for, but doing it each and every day with grace and passionate commitment to best serve the people of Missouri. Ladies and gentlemen, the First Lady of the state of Missouri. Now, there's another group of people with me today, and it's my family. And I am one of the most blessed people in the world to have the family I have, and for all of them to be here. And it really started with my son and my daughter years ago. That really made me a better person, having those two come in my life, and they're both here today with us. Naturally, they're the ones that have all my grandkids, and I just can't say enough how much my children's meant to me in my life and my grandkids. And most of them are here today, but I do have one I want to give a little bit of a shout out to. It is his first public event at the ripe age of 6 months. So he is with us here today for the first time. And then also I have another great-grandchild on the way that's here. My brothers are here. I have nieces and nephews and cousins, brothers, all my family from here. But I tell you, there's two things I know in life that are important. That's God Almighty and my family. I love all you guys that are here today. Would you please recognize my family and show them your appreciation? Please rise. Like the legislators in this room and Missourians across this state, My faith, family, and the next generations are the driving force behind the change we have made in Missouri. And last year, when I stood before you, I highlighted many of our historic achievements we've accomplished together. As we laid out bold and historic proposals, I declared that this governor, this dad, this Gramps is not done yet. And I tell you, we are not done yet. And while that's still true, I'm here to tell you we're getting close. After serving 6 sessions in the House, 6 sessions in the Senate, 2 sessions as Lieutenant Governor, and now my 6th and final session as your 57th governor, I am expected to say this is a bittersweet moment. But while the view from this dais facing all of you is a fine sight to see, but it is no comparison to the view of that Polk County farm behind the windshield of my John Deere tractor. But look, I promise I will think of all of you occasionally. But in all seriousness, I'll be leaving here with my head held high, because like many of you who came here for the right reasons, we never wavered from those wise words on our Capitol and inscribed in our state seal. Let the good of the people be the supreme law. In every decision we make, we must look to the effects on the next generations and the ability for them to achieve their American dream. In every decision, we must put people first. Easy said, but hard to do. It's a simple idea that has been our guiding principle since the very beginning. And that's our final commitment to you. Until our final day, we will continue to put people first. When I became governor, Missouri was tired of the turmoil, political infighting, and self-involved personalities. They were tired of quitters. And when I first stepped into the governor's office, amidst the thousands of camera clicks, hundreds of shouting questions, and countless state, local, and national media, we closed the chapter on scandal and began a new direction because there was no turning back. We declared a fresh start and the return of stability. We committed to ensuring the next generations have their opportunity at the American dream. We promised the return of integrity to state government. And above all, we promised to return people-first mentality. And today, I firmly believe we have done just that. Every year, we have approved conservative and balanced budgets. We have maintained our AAA credit rating, and we've always left funds on the bottom line. Actually, with the budget we outlined today, we will leave office with over $1.5 billion on the bottom line, which has never been done before in our state's history. We are also pleased to report that we have paid down Missouri's debt by over $600 million, leaving the state with 53% less debt than when we started. That is quite the contrast compared to what we are seeing happening in Washington, D.C. In Missouri, we don't leave future generations to pick up the tab. We pay our bills and we put people first. Working with all of you, balanced and conservative budgets have always been the norm, never the exception. We've always been more interested in giving back Missourians' hard-earned dollars rather than spending them. In turn, that creates jobs, business growth, and increased revenues to the state. In fact, state revenues have increased 40% since 2018, with a significant growth coming from sales revenue, not income tax, not corporate tax, and not fuel taxes, but from revenue created by Missourians spending their own money, not government programs. And one of the huge factors is the 3 separate tax cuts we approved, including the largest in our state's history. We have decreased Missourians' tax burdens by over 20%, unleashing an economic powerhouse in the state of Missouri. When I became governor, we were ranked 42nd for GDP growth and last among our Midwest neighbors. Today, we are ranked 23rd in the nation and top 5 in the Midwest for GDP growth. That's a real reckoning here in Jeff City. That's not all talk and all hot air. That is a true reckoning of growth opportunity that Missourians have come to expect from this administration and state government. That's our leadership creating a real formula for success. And that's something all of us should celebrate in this chamber. Overall, Missouri now has the 13th lowest tax burden of any state in the nation. And under our administration, our unemployment rate fell to 2.1%, the lowest rate ever recorded in our state's history. Actually, it has been so low that our problem is not creating jobs, but filling jobs. Since becoming governor, we have added more than 110,000 jobs to our economy and closed out the year ranked 15th nationally for job creations. And today, as I stand before you for the final time as Missouri's 57th governor, I declare that the state of our state is stronger than it has ever been. We've done it all by putting people first, and that started with state government. Nothing we do in this room is possible without the dedicated public servants across the state to implement these ideas. But when I became governor, state government was quickly becoming underappreciated, understaffed, and underpaid. That's why we approved 3 historic pay increases to recruit and retain quality talent across state government, raising team member pay by over 20% since 2018. And let me just say, the investment in our state employees have been worth every penny. And that's why this year, we are proposing an additional 3.2% cost of living increase for all of our state employees. And representing our more than 47,000 state team members here today is my cabinet. Through every crisis, I turn to my cabinet and their teams not the federal government, and I have always maintained that the answers to our problems are in this state and among our people. If we just allow ourselves to put egos and self-importance to the side and just listen, and while they may have already been recognized, I want to ask my cabinet to stand with me for one last time. I always say that being a good leader is not about being the best, but it's making those around you better. And today, I thank you and your teams for proving that to be true. Putting people first is something we implemented across state government because we set the example from the governor's office. From the start, we got straight to work. We completed the largest deregulation effort in our state's history, eliminating nearly 1 out of every 5 state regulations. And during COVID-19, we waived over 600 more regulations. By working with the General Assembly, we made many of these changes permanent in statute and improved the regulatory environment in Missouri. Because to be honest with you, many of these rules and laws should have never existed in the first place. When I became governor, we also inherited nearly 4,000 pending clemency applications. While I'm a law and order governor, 4,000 people in limbo waiting for an answer is not how we do good business. Whether we approved them or we denied, we set out to provide answers. Today, I am proud to announce that the clemency backlog we inherited has been totally cleared for the first time in decades. But as a former sheriff, this reform did not mean we were letting people out of prison or forgiving violent criminals. We pardoned people who deserved it. People who had truly turned their lives around. People like Kenny Batson, who joins us here today. In his youth, Kenny was drinking, getting into fights, and found himself on the wrong side of the law. But today, Kenny has turned his life completely around. Kenny is a proud husband and father of 3 kids. He earned both a bachelor's and master's degree and has been a pastor for more than 20 years, including service as a hospice chaplain. Kenny's and others like him might have made some mistakes when they were young, but he earned a second chance. Please join me in recognizing Kenny Batson. Another way our office has been able to capitalize on historic opportunity is appointing over 155 Missouri judges and 3 Supreme Court judges, meaning more than 40% of the judiciary has been appointed by our administration. That's more appointments than any governor in our state's history. By focusing on core conservative values, we've truly reshaped judiciary for generations to come and guaranteed a judiciary that upholds the law and not the politics of the moment. Additionally, in putting the people of Missouri first, our office put politics aside and appointed 5 strong statewide office holders, which has never happened before in our state's history. Lieutenant Governor Kehoe, Attorney General Bailey, Auditor Fitzpatrick, Treasurer Malek, and though he's not here today, Senator Smith. And I thank all of you for stepping up and answering the call to serve Missourians, and I trust you will never quit on the people of the great state of Missouri. And today, I want to highlight another one of our quality appointments. In the city of St. Louis, Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore. We didn't pick Mr. Gore because of his politics. Matter of fact, we never even asked. It was because he clearly cared for the people of St. Louis. He valued strong communities, fighting crime, returning law and order, and putting people first. The level of professionalism between the Circuit Attorney's Office, the Metro Police, the courts, the Attorney General's office, and our office is greater than I have ever experienced. Please join me in recognizing St. Louis Circuit Attorney Gabe Gore. When the history books tell the story of Missouri's 57th governor, I hope it's our workforce development and infrastructure accomplishments that stand out. And this year, as we propose our final priorities as governor, there is no turning back. We know that guaranteeing Missouri's strong foundation starts with a quality education in our children. This year, we will once again fully fund the K-12 foundation formula with an additional $120 million over last year's level, and we will also fully fund transportation across the state of Missouri. In total, our administration has increased funding for K-12 education by $700 million since 2018. And I'll note that's all state funding, not the federal government. And at the same time, our administration and this General Assembly took the first step towards school choice for more Missouri families through our Education Savings Account program, and whether it's public, private, charter, or Christian, we don't care where Missourians are getting a quality education as long as they get one. This year, to do our part on teacher pay, we are including funding to increase teacher baseline pay to $40,000 per year. This represents a $15,000 increase for teacher pay during our administration. We are also recommending $6 million for Career Ladder. Together, these programs have benefited tens of thousands of teachers in every corner across our state. We've also made historic investments in Missouri's higher education. We've increased higher education core funding by 24% and invested $1.2 billion in state-of-the-art capital improvements and upgrades on our college campuses. In this year's budget, we included another 3% core increase for our four-year institutions and community colleges, and $54 million from MoExcel's workforce training program on our college campuses. When I graduated high school, I went straight into the workforce and joined the United States Army. And for me, there was no turning back. My path is similar to many Missourians, as nearly 60% of our workforce don't have college degrees. And that's okay, because we all know it doesn't take a college education to be successful. Since 2018, we have helped establish, upgrade, and transform 57 career and technical education institutions across our state. More of our young people are earning a quality skill, a certificate, or credential that will help secure them a good paying job without a college degree. We are also upskilling our current workforce and helping them secure the skills they need to succeed. Since its upgrade in 2019, Missouri One Start has helped train more than 173,000 workers. Additionally, since its creation, our Fast Track program has benefited over 1,700 students, with more than 55% going into health care. And ladies, I want you to listen up. And more than 2/3 of that being women. We have also made tremendous progress by prioritizing apprenticeships in this state. And joining us today are some of the individuals who have benefited from our historic support. In the upper gallery, we have Isaac Lowe from Four Rivers Career Center, Kayla Putnam, an apprenticeship and Army Reservist from Springfield, and Ricky Schmo, who is a trucking apprenticeship from Pleasant Hill. I firmly believe that with hard work, determination, and a skill of some kind, anyone can achieve the American dream, and these individuals are proving it. Please join me in recognizing these hardworking folks and others like them across the state. This group represents just a sample of the more than 57,000 new apprenticeships we have added since becoming governor. Under our administration, yearly apprenticeship activity in Missouri has grown by 100%. That's why this year we're including another $3 million investment to support even more youth apprenticeship opportunities. As you can see, these targeted investments truly make a difference in the lives of Missourians. And thanks to our past efforts, I'm proud to report that Missouri is ranked second in the United States of America for apprenticeship, and that's something we should all be proud of. Like any challenge in this state, we rise to it. We don't hide from it. This year, we are also investing another $10 million for advanced semiconductor research, development, and skills training, as well as nearly $7 million to support critical mineral development in Missouri. Missouri ranks 4th in the nation for new manufacturing when it comes to semiconductors and critical minerals. We can lead, and we will lead, to ensure we never have to rely on nations like China again. Another focus in the workforce development arena that the First Lady and I are especially proud of is JAG Missouri. JAG includes students who may be struggling academically, who may have found themselves in some trouble, or are high risk. When we first began JAG initiative back in our Lieutenant Governor days, JAG was supporting just 6 programs and serving 225 students. Today, JAG Missouri supports 112 programs and serves more than 4,000 Missouri students with a high school graduation rate of 98%. And that's thanks in large part to the First Lady for taking this program under her wing. In the upper gallery, we have current and former JAG students joining us today. Thanks to JAG, these students are well on their way, whether that's college, the military, or straight into the workforce. And with your help, we can support this life-changing program with an investment of $3.8 million. But if you choose not to stand behind these students in the upper gallery and the thousands like them across the state, it won't be me you have to answer to, but the First Lady herself. Would you please join me in giving these JAG students and specialists here with us today a round of applause? When it comes to preparing Missourians for the workforce, we know we are on solid ground. The biggest thing we can do is simply continue. But today, our state is in a critical need of quality early learning programs. Business leaders estimate that the lack of early learning programs is costing our state over $1 billion annually. And over 85% of Missourians believe early childhood learning supports a child's success, parent success, and a business success. But today, we only have the capacity to serve just 39% of Missouri's children in licensed facilities, and it's time for change. This year, along Senator Arthur and Representative Shields, we're again proposing 3 new child care tax credit programs. These programs will help improve access and affordability for families seeking child care across the state of Missouri. Additionally, we are continuing funding for the expansion of pre-kindergarten programs. These are common sense measures that are good for business, that are great for families, and best for our Missouri children. Joining us today, Catherine Gaudier and her child Theo, who utilize Missouri's child care subsidies. Yet Catherine still finds it difficult to find quality child care. Catherine is a full-time nursing student that uses Mineral Areas College's early learning program. Without help, she's not sure she could afford or find care for Theo. Catherine only wants the best possible education for Theo, something I think we can all agree on. And that should be the minimum for every child in Missouri. That's why this year we are proposing a $52 million investment in Missouri's child care subsidy program to make sure infants, toddlers, and children like Theo can receive the quality care they need and deserve. Please join me in welcoming Catherine, Theo, and Program Director Jennifer Sykes from Mineral Area College. Another issue affecting Missouri children is the fentanyl crisis. Drugs pouring into our country through the southern border is devastating Missouri families. Last year, dozens of Missouri children were lost due to fentanyl exposure. And I'm going to say that one more time. They were lost to fentanyl exposure. They didn't use it. They didn't do anything. They were just exposed to it, and they lost their lives. This year, alongside Senator Thompson Rader and Representative Parker, we are proposing legislation that guarantees stricter punishments for exposing children and minors to fentanyl. The fentanyl crisis is here, and it's tearing families and communities apart. Children dying from fentanyl is 100% preventable. And while President Biden and the federal government fail to do their jobs by securing our southern border, Missouri will act. We are also protecting Missouri children and our most vulnerable by supporting Attorney General Andrew Bailey's plan to find, prosecute, and punish human traffickers in the state of Missouri. Together, these initiatives are not only pro-children and pro-family, but pro-life as well. And speaking of pro-life, I want to take this opportunity to highlight our historic success in Missouri's fight for life. When I came to Jefferson City, nearly 8,000 elective abortions were performed annually in Missouri. And as I stand before you today, I am proud to report that number is 0. Now, another priority of this administration, roads, bridges, and Missouri's infrastructure. While roads and bridge repair might not be the most exciting topic, it is the one that impacts all Missourians the most. Infrastructure was one of the first major initiatives we took on. And 5.5 years ago, working with all of you, we set out to repair and replace 250 Missouri's poorest bridges. For the first time in our state's history, we leveraged general revenue and bonding authority to fund our Focus on Bridges program. The way in which we created this program allowed us to pull down additional funds to not only repair 250 overlooked and crumbling Missouri bridges, but it freed up additional resources for major projects like the Buck O'Neill Bridge, the I-270 North, and the new Roachport Bridge. Many doubted it would ever happen. But as I stand before you today, I say mission accomplished. Focus on bridges is complete. I-270 finished. And by this time next year, we fully expect Roachport and Buck O'Neill to be completed as promised. We truly believe that our Focus on Bridge program will be the model moving forward. Because although focus was in the name, it doesn't mean everything else stopped. In total, under our administration, we have repaired or replaced over 1,000 bridges across our state. We have repaired nearly 17,000 miles of Missouri roadway in 5 short years. That's about 50% of all Missouri's entire highway system that has been replaced or repaired. And I'll remind you, we have the 7th largest system in the nation. And as for rural Missouri, with an unprecedented funding of $200 million, nearly 2,000 miles of letters roads have been completed. When I became governor, our statewide transportation improvement program for infrastructure projects across the entire state stood at $2.5 billion. Today, our STIP is funded at nearly $14 billion. And joining us today in the upper gallery are the men and women who are making it all happen. Each of these 8 men and women represent over 130 years of experience and the more than 4,600 MoDOT employees across our state. Under our administration, we've kept this group busy. So please join me in recognizing their contributions to our state. The expansion of I-70 has been talked about in this building for decades. Decades of hot air, decades of passing the buck. Under our administration and this General Assembly and the leadership of Lincoln Huff, decades of inaction has turned into action, and this summer, construction on I-70 is set to begin in Columbia, and from there, let's just say there is no turning back. But it's the strategic way in how we chose to fund I-70 that I bring up the project today. With the smart use of our resources and efficient and effective work, we're projecting a I-70 completion not only on time, but with savings too. And 2 days ago, we received more great news from Congressman Graves that we will be receiving over $90 million in additional funds to put towards projects on I-70. With those savings and these additional funds today, we're announcing our recommendation to establish the I-44 Improvement Fund. This fund will build on the nearly $150 million already included in the current STIP. That's right, we aren't just laying the foundation to expand and improve one interstate across our state, but 2 interstates. Now that all sounds good, but I have more. Today we are also ranked second in the United States for capital and bridge projects, 9th for improving rural roads, and 11th for the cost effectiveness and conditions of our roadways. Another important piece of infrastructure is broadband. Working with you, our administration has invested over $400 million towards broadband expansion, making tens of thousands of homes, business, and farm connections across the state. Thanks to these efforts, and now another $1.7 billion is coming to our state through federal funds that former Senator Blunt helped to secure, we believe that in the next 5 years, the digital divide in Missouri will be closed once and for all. In less than 6 years, we've accomplished more than most governors are able to in 8 years. And I'll remind you, we did it all while challenged with some of the most unprecedented events in our state's history. Whether it was the duck boat crisis, floods, droughts, tornadoes, civil unrest, train derailments, or in 2020, when a global pandemic came knocking at our doors. A crisis that came with no roadmap or playbook. We never backed down or passed the buck. Oh, have there been critics? Sure. But critics are a dime a dozen. And one thing I have learned in life, you will never be criticized by someone doing more than you. It's always be the person doing the least who makes the most noise. Through all the criticism, we never stopped working for the people of Missouri. And for all my like-minded colleagues who stood with me, fought alongside me, and who came here to be good public servants and put people first, I want you to listen closely to what I say next, because these are your wins too. Together, we have reshaped our Supreme Court and judiciary as a whole. We've protected the Second Amendment rights, focused on law and order, and safeguarded Missouri's landmark castle doctrine. We have fought the fight for life and reduced the number of abortions in our state from 8,000 annually to 0. We've streamlined state agencies, supported our team members, and reduced the size of state government. We built over 1,000 bridges, repaired 50% of our entire highway system, and crafted lasting partnerships. We've cut through nearly 20% of the regulations on the books and made state government more efficient and effective while unleashing an economic development. We've maintained our AAA credit rating and achieved the lowest unemployment ever recorded in our state's history. We've paid our bills. We've left the state of Missouri with 50% less debt than we started. We left $1.5 billion on the bottom line. We've created over 110,000 jobs and brought $14.5 billion in new business investments. We've cut taxes 3 times and reduced income tax burdens by over 20%, with the largest income tax cut in our state's history. No one, I mean no one, has gone to bat for the people of Missouri like this administration and you, and today we have won. As I began to wrap up here, I want to recognize another group of special people who helped us make it all happen. These individuals are truly the best of the best. I couldn't have asked for better people to serve with in the office of governor. And with 6 million Missourians across our state, they're often overlooked and overworked, but their impact on this state is beyond measure. We've taken on challenges that no one could ever imagine. They never complained, they never gave up, and above all, they believed. They believed in the mission. They believed in our people. And they believed in the extraordinary capabilities of Missourians to achieve an even better tomorrow. I'm filled with pride that we have public servants of such caliber serving our great state. As the sun begins to set on my public service career, I know their talents will continue benefiting Missourians today, tomorrow, and years to come. To the most loyal and hardworking people I have ever had the honor of working alongside, from the bottom of my heart and on the behalf of this entire state, I say thank you. With the members of my staff, both past and present, please stand to be recognized. As a final message to this body, I'm reminded of an old saying. A society grows great when old men and women plant trees, the shade of which they know they will never sit in. Summarize, it's all about putting people first. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been the focus of this administration. We've planted the seeds today for a better Missouri tomorrow. The First Lady and I may never be able to fully realize the work we've done here alongside of all of you. But that was never the purpose in the first place. The point is that all of our kids and our grandkids across the state will. With faith, family, and freedom at the forefront, honoring the Constitution, and leading with the ideas of the Declaration of Independence, putting people first. That's what leadership has been to us. In Missouri, our economy is strong. Our democracy is strong. Our people are strong. And we can keep it that way if we continue to put people first. Missourians took a chance on me and placed their confidence in me and my team to put the people of the state first. You gave me the largest victory margin of any Republican governor in modern history, and I will forever be grateful. When I got the call to become governor, my big brother told me, little brother, you come back home the same way you're leaving here today, with your head held high. Well, I'll be keeping that promise. The First Lady and I will return to the farm with our heads held high. And if we are honored enough to be considered by Missourians as a pretty good governor, a decent guy, or someone who never forgot where he came from, then it will all be worth it. Words cannot express the sincere appreciation I have for this state and our people. So for one final time before this chamber today, I simply say to the more than 6 million Missourians who I've had the absolute privilege of serving, it has truly been the honor of my life to be your 57th governor of the great state of Missouri. God bless you, God bless Missouri, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Senator from Shelby. You've heard the motion from the Senator of Shelby County. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. This joint session is adjourned.
Folks, there you heard the final State of the State address from Governor Mike Parson, giving his sixth and final speech as the chief executive of the state, going over his priorities for the upcoming year, reflecting on a legacy that he has as his 6 years coming in under sort of tumultuous times as well. I'm here alongside Hannah Falcon here to talk about the State of the State speech, and Hannah kind of led off with kind of a little bit of what we talked about, him reflecting on kind of how he took office as well. I will note that, he said that the state was tired of quitters. Certainly, you certainly hear in the way that they, comments made and the way that they talk, certainly no apparent love lost between Mike Parson and Eric Greitens, the person that he took over from there in 2018. But, having to acknowledge that was sort of how he came into office, how this all really got started with him as governor was in those sort of tumultuous times of 2018 there. But now taking us into 2024, I will say that, it sounded pretty emotional talking about his family. Especially kind of went off script a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is sweet to see him honoring his wife, his children, his grandchildren. I mean, grandchildren born while he was in office here, so it's a very special moment for him. And we always, if you're here and you're coming to these events, you see how much he truly loves children, and that's very apparent if you spend any time in a room with him. He's always putting the children first, and he'll be the first to say he likes the children better than the adults, and who can blame him?
Sure. And I will use that kind of as a segue here about with children, is to talk about kind of one of his big policy pushes is childcare. Look, as many parents are probably aware, it ain't cheap out there to do childcare. Something the state, has got to figure out, or at least, what their role is in making this more affordable for parents. This is a huge push amongst the job sector as well. I know the Chamber of Commerce says this is a big thing, holding a lot of people back from working, a lot of jobs from being able to keep people around. Is I need somebody to take care of the kid while I'm at work. So, and we heard some talk of what they're going to do here, tax credits, things like that, on ways to improve and expand on childcare in the state. Something that the legislature is going to probably spend some time talking about. In that
Absolutely. We definitely do expect that. And you said it was a big thing that the chamber bring up. So I would say it's the biggest thing. The Missouri Chamber has said it's the number one issue with getting more people into the workforce here in Missouri. They want more child care. So I think that's certainly something we're going to be hearing a lot of things bounced around about. A lot of ideas have certainly already come out about that, but I think it'll be interesting to see what rises to the top.
Yeah, and we'll see if tax credits are the way. By the way, what we're setting up for here right now is the Democratic response to that State of the State speech. So definitely going to hear, we're probably going to hear from the House Minority Leader Crystal Quaid, a candidate for governor coming up later this year, and how that is going to work with how that's going to work from the Democratic side. You know, a lot of Democrats are also very passionate about this issue too, on expanding and helping out with child care here. In fact, it was Senator Lauren Arthur, who's a Democrat from Kansas City, got mentioned in the speech. A Republican governor, he could have taken a GOP victory lap here, but of course mentioned a Democratic senator in there that they're going to work on that as part of this as well. So we'll be interested to hear what the Democrats here have to say about the child care issue as well.
Absolutely, yeah. In the past couple of years, actually, we have seen quite a few things where the governor actually aligned more with the Democratic Party on certain issues. One of those was teacher pay, which was another thing that we also heard today. But yeah, I think that there was definitely some things, I wouldn't say budget priorities in this speech, but more of his policy priorities that he mentioned that I think they will have some negative things to say about. One of those being the abortion issue that he didn't mention. Of course, while there are some things being introduced on that, I feel like he thinks the job is kind of done there with the abortion ban. The other thing was the blanking.
Yeah, we'll talk about. I do want to mention the abortion issue for a second. I mean, he did have a line in there mentioning that Missouri went from 8,000 elective abortions to 0. One of the first states in the country to have that ban on abortion after the Dobbs decision. Something, Hannah, you have covered a lot of, and how this building and the people here have responded to that. Obviously, it was a big applause line for the Republicans.
The announcements. Yeah. The other issue that I was thinking of was, of course, school choice, which we did speak about before. I know that the Democrats and the Republicans have very different opinions on school choice, but we did finally hear from the governor on it. I haven't heard him speak publicly on that, so I would be interested to hear what the Democrats have to say in response to his stance on school choice, that he's very pro school choice.
Yeah, education savings accounts is sort of what is usually debated here in that regard. We'll see how the expansion of those goes, if they are expanded at all throughout the year. Another big thing, I mean, we hear about this a lot, is the teacher grants, right? The grants that the state makes available to teachers who aren't paid up to $40,000 and get some state money to get those teachers up to that level. So we've got another year of doing that.
Baseline salary grants is the
Thank you.
salary.
Yeah, thank you. This is something Governor Parson, this has been a big part of sort of his last several budgets, right? He's very big supporter of this idea. What is the likelihood of this program sticking around under a new governor? I mean, what is the approach going to be for teacher pay after this administration? But it's just something to think about further on. But again, that's coming back apparently under Parson's suggestion.
And it is higher. We're going from that 38 to now 40,000. But I think that is one of actually the biggest criticisms. Is while it is a success to give the teachers the pay raise, it is a temporary pay raise, and some still say it's not enough. So that is something that will be a conversation for years to come, and we'll certainly have lots of different ideas that will probably come up even this year.
Right. So again, we are getting ready for the Democratic response to the state of the state right now. Currently the House chamber here is wrapping up, going through their announcements, about to adjourn, and we should hear from them shortly after that. But the other thing I will mention too, as we learned, they got some more federal money for the Interstate 70 expansion. Again, a legacy-defining thing there, just getting it to 3 lanes. And of course, for those of you who might live in the southern part of mid-Missouri, the big news for you is that he wants I-44 now expanded after that. So a lot of money that he wants to set aside to get I-44 all the way there. As we get ready here, and I think any last thoughts from you that you want to share before we get ready for this?
The I-70 expansion is certainly the biggest success that we've seen in the last year, maybe in the past couple of years. But I think that we will be hearing from the Democrats soon. They're walking up right now. So
we'll step out of the way and hear from Representative Crystal Quaid.
Yeah, folks in Sweden. Yeah, exactly. Slide right up. I know. This is us. Sometimes what I'm being challenged.
You'll want to step back.
100%.
Or taller, do you?
And you just go like that, and you just okay.
Doesn't take much.
heard that.
We didn't say anything.
Got it. Is it?
Oh, it is?
Okay.
I said, I take it.
Thank you all so much for sticking around and giving us time. Normally we are in the House lounge, but apparently the Speaker has it reserved for a party, so we are here instead. So apologies that we're crammed in, and thank you to the caucus for doing so. So Governor Parson just offered several solid proposals that the House Democrats can get behind. In fact, Democrats have pushed many of these ideals for a very, very long time. One Democratic proposal in particular we're glad the governor mentioned is improving Missourians' access to child care services. We have been fighting for child care expansion for what seems like forever, only to encounter stiff resistance from Republicans. In fact, the very first bill I filed in 2017 dealt with child care subsidies. So we're glad the governor understands that ensuring parents have safe and affordable child care options is vital for those parents to be able to work, provide for their families, and help grow our economy. Some other highlights from his speech I'd like to bring up are the $120 million additional school funding for the foundation formula, increase in teacher pay, the MoExcel workforce program, broadband infrastructure funding, maternal mortality rates. There were a lot of things that the governor highlighted today that we were very excited about. We want to see bills on these issues hit the governor's desk, and we'll do our part to make that happen. I'm grateful that Governor Parson talked about putting people first, something that we have always done as the Democrats, and something that we are always talking about. But one thing that's interesting that he did not highlight today is the Republican push around going after the initiative petition. One person, one vote. If we're going to talk about people first, then they should have a voice at the ballot box. But let's not fool ourselves into thinking the prospects are good for much of anything important going through the legislature this year. That's because, just like Republicans in Washington, D.C., Republicans in Jeff City constantly prove incapable of governing. Just like in D.C., a small group of GOP extremists are holding the legislative process hostage in an attempt to bully through legislation that's unpopular with most lawmakers and definitely most Missourians. Just like in D.C., political theater to pander to the right-wing base takes precedent over actual problem solving. And that's a terrible shame. Because when we resolve to focus on the issues important to working class families and hunker down to do the work, there is no limit to what we could actually accomplish. We could eliminate the grocery tax to help struggling families. We could help small businesses expand and thrive. We could take rural hospitals off the endangered species list. We could ensure that every Missouri child has access to childcare and quality education no matter where they're from. We could end foreign control of Missouri farmland. And we could guarantee that no woman is charged for murder for having an abortion. Missourians are fed up with ineffective Republican leadership in Jefferson City. They're demanding change, and in November, change is coming. Happy to take questions.
What's your take on his legislative priority of increasing punishment for fentanyl-related crimes?
Yeah, so as someone who has actually lost a family member to addiction, I am grateful that the Republicans and Governor Parson are having conversations around this serious problem in our state and in our country as a whole. I haven't actually read the policy proposal for increased penalties. I will say that blaming the southern border for our problem here in Missouri is quite interesting. If you look at statistics around who is actually importing these drugs, majority of, I believe it's 65% is the last number I saw, are actually U.S. citizens. So I thought that was an interesting pivot. I am interested to see what policies he's trying to push, but again, policies in this building are going to be hard to come by.
He mentioned President Biden during that, but he didn't mention President Biden during the infrastructure.
All the money we were talking about? Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for that comment. I thought it was very ironic to go after President Biden when talking about our southern border, which is Arkansas, so I thought that was interesting. But yes, thank you to President Biden and former Senator Blunt for bringing money down to Missouri, and I think that's a very important piece to be highlighting.
What do you think is the Governor Mike Parson legacy?
That is a very heavy question. I think the legacy of Governor Parson is riddled with a lot of unfortunate events. You know, him coming in after ousted Governor Greitens. You know, he talked about a lot of really great things that he accomplished, but we didn't talk about the DOR director that had to get fired for fumbling the Trump tax tables and charging many Missourians too much in their taxes several years ago. We didn't talk about the Department of Health director who tracked women's periods. We haven't talked about all of the people that he had to appoint one after another for various reasons and not giving people an actual voice in who's representing them. There are a lot of things that we could talk about that have not been great within this administration, but I will pivot back to say that I'm grateful that he is finally talking about things that we know Missourians are caring about.
You had mentioned the extreme Republicans just a little bit ago. So are you not sold on what happened yesterday with the Senate President Pro Tem and stripping some of the members of the Freedom Caucus from their committee assignments?
Sold in what way? I'm sorry.
In terms of work getting done.
Oh, no. So I will say that I think what Senator Rowden did was a good move. It's probably a move that should have happened several years ago. You guys have heard me say many times that last year was the least amount of public policy bills passed in Missouri's history outside of the year of COVID, and that's because of the GOP extremist gridlock that continues to happen in this building. And I think Republican leadership should have done something about this a very long time ago. Taking away parking spaces from people who are having temper tantrums is not going to do any good.
The governor normally strays away from talking about policy. He really talks about budget during state of state. He made an exception for Representative Shields and Senator Lauren Arthur's child care bills. What did you make of that he did that?
Well, a two-part answer to that, if I may. I think it was interesting that he didn't talk about any other policy. I think that's a highlight to what we've been talking about, the fact that we don't expect much to get done at all this year. And normally we do see a little bit more sprinkled in. I would say, again, I'm really grateful that they're highlighting childcare as a big priority. Again, this is something we've been talking about for a very long time. I believe him calling out specific legislation hopefully will apply some pressure to the reasonable folks in the room, but we'll see what happens.
If Mike Parson says the state of the state is stronger than ever before, you'd say the state of the state is what?
Well, I would say when we're looking at things like the lowest teacher pay in the entire country, the 49th funding in our schools across the country, the highest maternal mortality rates in the country, comparable to third world countries, you know, we have a lot of work to do. I am grateful that the governor is highlighting a lot of these priorities, but again, even this budget has to get through both sides of this building, and I'm not sure of the fact that the extremists who are holding that place hostage over there are going to let it get done.
Crystal, back here.
Hey.
Question about the $1.5 billion being left. We heard Governor Mike Parson mention that a handful of times during his speech. And should $1.5 billion be left? Should it be spent on something, or should it go back to Missourians? What do you think about that?
Listen, there are a lot of priorities that everyone behind me would like that money to go towards, but the reality is Republicans have cut corporate tax cuts time and time again, and we still have triggers from before I even got here for tax changes that are going to impact our budget as a whole. So I understand why the governor is holding that for a rainy day, because the rainy day is coming, and we know that, and that's because of Republican tax changes.
The governor announced that 3.2% increase for state employees, which, you know, I'm sure they're appreciative of, obviously. But there are some agencies, and I talk about this all the time, Children's Division, where 3.2% is not going to be enough to recruit and retain people. Is your caucus going to try to push for specific increases in places like Children's Division, where going up to 7, 8, 10% may be the difference between a massive staff shortage and not?
Absolutely. I think it's very important that we highlight Children's Division, especially because we're literally talking about children's lives, and we know that if we are not recruiting enough staff and paying them appropriately to continue to be here, that children will die. We have seen that in our state, and that will continue unless we make it a priority. So absolutely, yes, we will be having that conversation through the Budget Committee to try to increase those wages.
Last year, the Democrats stood up for the state of the state just as much as Republicans did. I watched a lot of you today, and you all stood up for education. You all stood up for educator pay, child care, and, you know, increased pay for state workers. Where do you think that this speech fell? Did it feel like it was more siding towards the Democratic side than maybe the Republicans? Because that party didn't stand up very many times.
Yes, I appreciate that. You know, I don't know if y'all remember last year, but I literally tore up my speech before I began because it was quite interesting to see Governor Parson highlight things that we have been championing for a very long time. And again, I'm very grateful for it. Where this speech fell flat is absolutely around women's access to reproductive health care. That is going to be on the ballot this fall. We're very excited about that, and we know absolutely it's going to pass. Every single poll that is out there, every corner of the state that that I go to, people want this. And so to highlight that is definitely a place where we disagreed. I would add to that the conversation around tax cuts and continuing down that path based on the question I had earlier. We are all for changing taxes in Missouri, but we want those tax changes to impact every single Missourian and not just the most wealthy, not just the corporations. And what we've unfortunately seen from this administration around taxes has been giving those breaks to those corporations and the wealthy in Missouri.
The governor celebrated 0 abortions, 0. I thought there was a rare or limited exception for when the mother's life was in extreme risk. Is that number truly 0?
I cannot fact check it, but I will say this, that while there is a, quote, exception for the life of the mother, I can tell you countless stories where I have been called directly from individuals who were going in to seek care during a miscarriage or other situations and being sent home by their doctors to bleed out at their homes until they are close to death before they will get treated. So if they're claiming that's the number, then okay, that's fine. But I know that the reality is that exception for life of the mother is not something that we're seeing, and women are suffering because of that.
The governor spoke proudly of how over his time in office he's appointed something like roughly 40% of the judiciary within the state. I guess as a Democrat, thinking about the long-term implications of that, does that give you pause for concern?
Absolutely it does. And we saw the same thing under the Trump administration with record numbers of appointments as well. I think that, while some of the appointments that the governor has done I've agreed with, and I know lots of our folks here have had conversations championing individuals being appointed, it absolutely is concerning. Political appointments are an interesting conversation. In Greene County, we've got the nonpartisan court plan, so I'm a big fan of that. But yes, that is a piece of concern for us.
So your district includes Interstate 44 area. I'm curious what you think about the governor's plan transferring the interest earned on the I-70 project fund for planning of I-44.
Yeah, very grateful that I-44 is a part of the conversation. I know last year when we made the investments into I-70, I-44 was brought up. We gave a little bit for a small section of it, but we're promised that in the next budget, I-44 would be a priority. So grateful that Governor Parson is continuing to elevate that. I don't know what that specific number is because it's based off of the I-70 number rollover. So I actually haven't seen that number yet, but I will say that I'm grateful that infrastructure continues to be a big topic of conversation. I will also add that our rural roads and bridges are a big problem throughout our state, and I know that there's a small amount of funding directed towards the lettered roads as well that are under state control, and so I was grateful to see that too.
I think it's 14 million. Does that go far enough?
I don't know exactly what that number is, so I don't want to misquote that, but I will say that I know Governor Parson continues to make infrastructure a priority. And again, thank you to Biden and Senator Blunt for bringing some of that money down, and we'll see how that goes. Any other questions?
Representative?
Yes.
Are you hopeful going forward?
Am I hopeful? I will tell you, I am very hopeful about November of 2024. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
That's not me, that's one of the reporters. Thank you for holding.